Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
I named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man who loves some bologna sandwiches in a kitchen. It's Frank. How are you today?
Full of baloney. How are you?
As always, you are full of baloney. I'm doing just fine. Frank. Frank, we are not alone.
What?
Just so you're there. There is someone among us. Would you like to tell everyone who that person is?
I am thrilled to introduce the king of sting, the fashion of passion. No, wait, that's a different thing.
The master of disaster.
The master of disaster. The Sultan of SWAT. No, I did it wrong again.
No, the Count of Monte Fisto.
The Count of
Frank, we just did this.
The internet's own Zaki Hasan. Welcome to Beer with Geeks. We are thrilled to have you here, my friend.
I belong to the internet.
You do. You do. Well, you're a well-known film critic and movie thinker in places like the San Francisco Chronicle and HuffPo and elsewhere. Where would you like folks to find you?
Well, I suppose you can find me on Twitter at Zaki's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner, and that's where I tend to bloviate. I was about to say I'm flattered that you call me a thinker, because I feel like that's giving me too much credit. But I will gladly, I will take it. I will quit while I'm ahead and take that compliment.
Well, Zaki, then it was great to have you. Thanks for stopping by.
See you later, everybody. It's been nice.
Well, we've been the three of us have been like Twitter friends for a long time, and I'm just thrilled to have you on the show. And I know that the movie we're going to talk about today is one that you're quite a fan of, and
it is near and dear. So you may break my heart today if your opinion went in a different way.
We'll see. We'll see.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frank. Mm-hmm. But first and foremost, tell me what you're drinking before we dive into anything.
Sure. I'm drinking a new one for me. This is a Singlecut softly spoken magic spells Imperial IPA. I had never come across this one before, but I liked the label, quite frankly. It's got a bunch of chat bubbles on it. And I know I like Singlecut, and I liked the label, and I checked it out, and it is quite good. I'm a fan, so I'm going to give this one a thumbs up.
Oh, good for you.
Anybody else drinking
Frank,
anything?
I am also drinking an IPA, Frank, which never happens ever, because truthfully, I don't really care for them. But what we're going to talk about today kind of takes place near India, or is supposed to. And so I thought India Pale Ale was appropriate. So I'm drinking a Fanny Session from the Revival Brewing Company. And it's named after, I am a Rhode Island transplant. It's where I live now. And there was an Asian elephant named Fanny that was part of it, that was in a zoo here for a long time. It was named in her honor. And so it's good. It's got a really big hop, kind of like an elephant's got a big footprint. And so if you like the big hop, then it's for you. If you don't, then what are you doing drinking an IPA is really the question.
Maybe it's not for you.
Yes, that is correct.
Right.
Zaki, what liquid graces your throat today?
I am having a nice tall glass of water, and boy, am I loving it.
Good for
That's
you.
good for you. Good for you. A nice tall glass of water like yourself. Good for you.
I am also. I'm hydrating. I'm hydrating on the side just to, I mean, I gotta keep up my podcast stamina,
Correct. Yeah. For every sip of beer Frank has to take 2 sips of water.
Sure.
That's
yes.
the rule that I just made up.
Yep. That is
just right now.
Yes. That's how we do it. So listen, I watched a movie this week because I thought it would be weird if we talked about a movie and I hadn't seen it. So I watched The Phantom, starring Billy Zane, Christy Swanson, who else? Catherine Zeta-Jones,
Trent Williams.
Treat Williams. And what a treat he is.
And
he is. Yeah.
And I gotta say, okay, so now you two both have a history with this film, correct?
Oh yes.
Very much so.
Yes, but let's start with our guest, Zaki. When did you come to the Phantom?
As far as the character of the Phantom, I read the comic books when I was a kid. I was born in Chicago. My family moved to Saudi Arabia when I was a little kid, and we used to visit India because I had relatives there.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 80s, and over there, the characters that were most popular were like Flash Gordon, Phantom, and Mandrake. And so that's how I became aware of the Phantom, was reading these reprints of American comic books in India. And then in the late 80s, there was a cartoon show called Defenders of the Earth.
Yep.
And that was a team up with Flash Gordon, Phantom, and Mandrake. And I was like, I know those guys, and I don't think most 80s kids knew the Phantom and, Mandrake. I think they knew Flash Gordon. But
yeah.
I was like one of the few people that watched that cartoon. So 10 years later, when the movie comes out, I feel like the movie was aimed at me and basically only me, because no one, I was in high school at the time. It was coming out between my junior and senior year, and no one was even remotely interested in any of what that movie had to offer. No Billy Zane and purple body stocking. That was not on the agenda for them. So I was a lonely soul watching that movie.
That's so sad.
Which is a travesty, because Billy Zane signed up for 2 sequels that we'll never see.
I know.
I know. So now Frank, it's new for you. So I don't remember seeing it in theaters, but I do remember the sweet eggshell cassette tape that we had with the 3D image of Slam Evil, where like the ring would glow, the ring would not glow. It was awesome. And I grew up, listening to the show, Frank, like I grew up watching, the Michael Keaton and
Chris Reeve and all these things. Matt Salinger, Captain America, bless him.
Nice.
And so we but I friggin' loved the Phantom. I loved it so much. Like the Shadow and the Phantom, like those were my guys. My brother even went dressed as the Shadow for Halloween once. We like made our own costumes. The Phantom was a little bit harder to replicate, we discovered. But it's a movie that I could quote in and out, and like in a way that, like the bologna sandwich, like what's in the sandwich? Bologna. Like that's bologna. Like that's not something that should stay in my head for 20 years or however long it's been since the movie came out, but more than that now, 25 years. But
it's funny that you say that, because just the other day, my wife, she comes back from the grocery store and she's like, "Hey, I got some new toothpaste," and I'm like, "Toothpaste? That's nice. That's nice.
That's good. That's good."
Now, did she get it, or was that for
not
you?
even remotely.
Yeah.
That was solely like I looked in the mirror and gave myself an air high five.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. See, I do that all the time, but for me, it's like a George Reeves wink in the mirror to myself. Nice. Well, I have no history with this movie. My history of this movie spans about 27 hours. And if you go back further, Tim always talking about how much he loves this movie for however long we've been friends, 15 years. But I really enjoyed it. I really liked this movie.
I knew you. I knew you would.
I wasn't sure I mean, okay, I like pulp heroes. So like, I thought like, okay, that checks that box. Like I should be good with this. Generally I like pulp heroes, but you know, I don't always like movies about pulp heroes. Like they're not always winners. So I wasn't sure, but this really hit the Indiana Jones, like check the Indiana Jones box, the Rocketeer. It really went that route and touched, you know, tickled those parts of my fancy. So I really enjoyed just like the action adventure aspect and the way it was written like a comic. I feel like. So I thoroughly enjoyed all of that, and I just had the best time watching this movie, and would like absolutely recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it and is thinking like just it is worth the watch. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, Frank. How much of it were you able to? How much of the movie were you able to go along for the ride? And was there anything that wrinkled your nose?
There was a good amount that I had to sort of like do some suspension of disbelief or just sort of like, well, we're at the movies, you know, capital movies. It was very much a 90s movie that takes place in what, the 30s? It very much feels that way. But that's why I say that it had like an Indiana Jones sort of vibe to it, because it's like, it is a movie that, you know, Indiana Jones movies made in the 80s that takes place in another decade. So it's sort of, I mean, it had that nostalgic feel to it. Also, I have a gripe with you, Mr. Tim, and that is that you never told me how much old New York plays a role in this movie.
Sure.
And if you wanted to sell me on this movie, that was the way to do it, is to be like, hey, it's pulpy, it's like Indiana Jones action adventure, and a big chunk of it takes place in like 30s New York. I'd be like, well, where's this movie been all my life? Who's been hiding it from me? But that's okay. We can still be friends.
Thank you. Zaki, what, apart from having a history with the Phantom, like what is it about this movie that makes you come back to it over and over again?
Oh my gosh, so many things. You know, I think from the jump, I really like the sense of earnestness that this movie has. You know, it really unabashedly embraces sort of being this old-fashioned story of daring do, and it doesn't really need to wink at it. You know, I think Kit Walker is not a particularly complicated character, but that's the appeal. Like, he's just a good guy, you know? Mm-hmm. And I really was gonna say, like, it makes me nostalgic, but I found it invigorating even when I saw it, right? And I was old enough to know, like, that this is not, you know, this is not a character who's particularly in the zeitgeist. I knew enough then, but I just it doesn't wink at the audience. It embraces it. You know, you've got Treat Williams, who's like, he's just so happy. He's like the happiest bad guy I've ever seen. You know, did you hear? We're going to the Devil's Triangle. Let's go. You know, and
I love this.
He's so happy. You know? Yeah. Show me the power. You know. There's a scene where you're talking about old New York when the Phantom is in the building and he's there. The bad guys are leaving the building and he's chasing after them, and the Phantom is running out and he knocks the purse out of this woman's hand, and he stops and he picks up the purse and he hands it back to her. And what I love about it is it's not even like a moment. It's not like, oh, hold on, let me stop, let me give it to you. It's just while he's doing it, like, it's just a thing he does. Oh, here you go, and he just keeps going, right? And I think Billy Zane just found this groove, man. Like he's absolutely earnest, but you buy it, and he has this physicality that is so unlike any other on-screen superhero. You know, he's not into this muscle suit. So I think part of it is he moves like a cat, you know? And I really do feel like he should have become a bigger name, you know, if not because of the Phantom. I just feel like the guy's a talent, you know?
Yep, I agree. I do know that he read a lot of the original Lee Falk strips in order to like get the physicality of the Phantom. So he would like look at a lot of the drawings and be like, okay, he crouches, he bends his shoulders like this, and he tried to embody that. And if you look at the old drawings and you look at him, he's like, yeah, that's what he's doing. He like moves like a panther or something. Like that's it's great.
I love that.
And he so confidently wears the purple stocking. And I think that's a huge sell for me, because I know they originally wanted him in like a rubber, like the rubber foam bat suit. That was the route they originally wanted to go. And he was like, no, but I put on all this muscle to like to show off, and like, which is like, I guess also why that scene, or like why he gets stabbed by Quill just to be stitched up. He's like, listen, this was a lot of hard work, and we're gonna make sure that this is on screen all oiled up for a little bit.
Can we have a shirtless scene, please? I worked really hard on it, and I would just really like a shirtless scene. The opposite of me, but anyway. Yeah, can I wear more shirts? Can I wear like a hoodie over 3 shirts?
Yeah, that's Frank. You're looking nice and svelte there. He's like, thanks. I'm wearing 3 sweaters.
Yeah, that's like, in my comfort zone of 3 sweaters.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any favorite characters? Like you can, I mean, you know, it can be the Phantom. It can be, but like any favorite characters to call out. And we'll start with Zaki. Like favorite characters in this Stillmore, characters who you are drawn to the most.
Well, I mentioned Treat Williams in this. I mean, he lives up to his name. Gosh darn it, what a treat he is. I mean, the guy is having an absolute blast. You can tell he's just having fun, you know.
Yes.
And he almost like you can't like it's he's in terms of his you know, he's just like a businessman, right? And he could have played it sort of straight down the middle, but instead he kind of, I was gonna say he camps it up, but that almost would be a diminutive, because I don't mean he's doing like a Batman 66 type thing. You believe he's a bad guy. I mean, we have that great scene right in the beginning with that microscope, which who keeps something like that in their office? What kind of psychopath does that, right?
I want to know who has to clean it afterward.
Yeah.
But I love that. I mean, as we have that intro of him at the party where he's like, well, maybe I'll just buy your paper right out from under you, you know? And you're like, oh, this guy's kind of a weasel. But then we get like the microscopes, and you're like, oh, okay, this guy, he's bad news, this guy. But gosh darn it if we don't like him.
And what about when he tomahawks that guy to the door?
Oh no, the spear.
Yeah. Like, what the hell?
An altar boy for the love of St. Timothy's, and so was you, Charlie. Like, they sound like they're in that the Home Alone movie. They're like, hey, I smell you getting off the elevator.
Angels with filthy souls.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
AC said 10%.
Yeah,
keep the change, you filthy animal. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what they said. But I love. But to Zaki's point, like, there's a lot of little character moments that Treat Williams does. That like he throws the spear and he's like, you know, like, oh no, we're going now. I'm too excited, and he pulls. But then he like looks back at the door and he's like, oh, I nicked it.
Yeah, I know.
Right. You know, like it's stuff like that really sells him as a fun character. But I think everybody's great. For some reason, I like Quill because I like James Remar, or Remar, whatever. But he was a cool bad guy when I was a kid. He's got a cool voice. He means business. But he's also like this, like he's like on his own. He's like an alpha male, but then as soon as he gets in the room with Xander Drax, he's a weird kiss up where he's like, yeah, no, I swear I killed him. Like, you know, and I like, yeah. So right up to the hilt. Apparently apparently it was supposed to I was just reading this. I never really looked up anything on the movie, that it was supposed to be tongue in cheek. Like Joe Dante was supposed to direct originally, and it was supposed to kind of be this like campy nonsense movie, and it got shelved and it was taken out. They kept the original script, but nobody said that it was supposed to be campy, and so they played it earnestly, which I think works to the strength of the movie. But there are moments where you can read where they would have like right up to the hilt that felt like it would have been like, that's the comedic line somewhere in there. But I really like him. I have to say though, there is something pretty special about Al the cabbie.
Yes, that was gonna be he's my favorite. Yeah. Like aside from the main cast, Al the cabbie like really stood out to me, because I've definitely seen that. That actor is definitely a character actor who's done some other stuff. But
he was in Ace Ventura. He was one of the detectives. Independence Day. Yeah. Speed. Yeah.
So he's gotten yes, he does.
He's one of those, hey, that guy.
Yes,
actors.
totally.
Right.
But he just delighted me in the way that and I love that he's just like, yeah, here's like a bunch of gems. I promise they're real. Get them appraised while I'm gone, and just stick around all day. And yeah, that's fine.
I never kid.
Yeah, I never kid.
Yeah,
right.
I do like. I really love that whole scene, even with Jimmy Wells, where he's like, "Oh, and by the by, Jimmy Wells, how do you know Diana?" It's like, we were friends at college. And to Jimmy, he's like, I see. It's like, I'm just gonna,
and he just kind of like steps back.
I'm gonna go cry in this corner. When I was a kid, for some reason, I thought Jimmy Wells was also Jimmy Olsen, like, because like Diana Palmer is clearly a Lois Lane, like, or a Margot Lane, or something along those lines. She's that archetype character.
Yeah.
Where, like, I was just adventuring out in this place, and I got back, and now I'm going off to this adventure over here, and I just always equated Jimmy and Jimmy.
At the time the movie was made, John Tenney was married to Terry Hatcher. So maybe you were just picking up something in the air. See that?
I was. That's exactly what was happening. I was like, you should be on Lois and Clark, not fake Jimmy number 2.
Yeah,
Bring back first Jimmy number 1 that kind of looks like you.
Yeah. Big Lois energy. That is really, wow, that's really interesting. Huh. I hadn't considered that. I like that connection.
Yeah.
I love Al the cabbie, but I actually I'm a little, I had such a big crush on Christy Swanson in the 90s and early 2000s. Like I didn't realize she was in this movie, so I was just delighted to see her, because I have always really, really liked her as an actor, and just it was a delight. And I also didn't realize that Catherine Zeta-Jones was in this movie, which was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like that's a big name. That's a big name actor.
Pre-Mask of Zorro, Catherine.
She wasn't a big name at the time.
Right.
Yeah, like it's funny because she blew up 2 years later with Zorro, and I was like, y'all didn't see her in The Phantom like 2 years ago. It was what happens,
That's so funny.
You miss Sala understanding the love triangle, or like the love triangle that was happening that nobody else got.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I think he's in love with her. Oh, this is getting more interesting by the minute.
Right.
like I like that they're like weirdly gossiping about like the Phantom's love life. I think that's
I love when they're in the car and she's like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you so mean?"
I know.
And she's like, "What about it?" or whatever. And then Xander Drax is like, "All right, everybody just shut up."
Like it is so earnest. Like the even asking why are you so mean is such an earnest right? Like it's like, why are you evil? Why do you hurt people's feelings? Like it's such an earnest way. And that, I think that's what kind of draws me to this, because like everyone knows I'm the biggest like Superman fan, and I really go for the earnest take on Superman. I really go for the sort of pulpy take on Superman. Like the Golden Age Superman was a pulp character. And I'm not necessarily saying that Golden Age Superman is my favorite take. It's not, but going back to the roots, like that is the roots of the character, and that's the thing that I love, and that's why I enjoy these kinds of stories. I enjoy pulp action heroes because they come from the same place as this character that means so much to me. And an earnest take on a pulp character really works for me, really resonates for me. And I think that's why I like this movie so much. It just was, it wasn't ironic. It wasn't poking fun at the genre. I mean, it did a little bit, and it was some camp, and there was some poking fun at itself, but for the most part, it was a pretty earnest take on it, and it was just sort of like, yeah, he's good because he's good. Because good. Yep. And that's all you really need to know. There's no there's no need for a dark backstory that explains why he decided to choose good despite all else. It's just like, no, he's just a good guy, and that's it.
You raise a good point, I think, but the actual a really good, strong strength. Words. A strong strength of this movie. A strong strength. Yeah. Really, I'm an English teacher. Does anybody know that?
Not anymore.
Yeah, no. Oh gosh, yeah, no. If anybody at work listened to this, they'd be like, "Why are you in charge?" So no.
You speak English? That's impossible.
Yeah, that's impossible. An excellent quality of this film experience is that they give you the backstory of the Phantom in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Saying brotherhood, pirates, kids on board, raised by blah, and now he's the Phantom. And then you just get the rest of it as it goes. So like the mystery of the ghost who walks, oh, I killed him. Like if you're a kid, especially, like you're like, whoa, is that the same kid as before, like that I just saw? But you said the Phantom was dead. There's this. And so like you do get a slight mystical element to him early on, and that goes further into explaining. But then like his whole reason for abandoning America, or at least Diana, and going back is like, my father passed away suddenly and I had to take up the family business. Like, bam, that was the right thing to do. And I had to do it because maturity, and that was, though, I mean, he kind of just, he goes to walks her. So I don't know if that's any good. Right.
Yeah.
So, you're right. I think there are two scenes particularly that I think come out very earnestly for Billy Zane when he's actually the Phantom. One is when he, when he's rescuing Diana from the boat and she's like, "Your dog's a wolf." And he's like, "I know." I love that. And I love when he goes to visit Captain Horton, and I think it's Captain Horton, and he's like, "Don't you ever come in the front door?" He's like, "It's too obvious. I like the window." Like, and he's eating the cucumber sandwich, like, yes. But he's like, he's so comfortable in the bodysuit for him to go from I'm relaxing in this chair to I'm standing with my hands on my hips, and I believe every second of that progression.
Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of the Superman and Lois scene in Superman 78. Like, let me just sit at your patio furniture, your rooftop furniture, and talk to you in my cape and red boots.
Right.
And I'm totally comfortable in who I am.
I never lie.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that Chris Reeve comparison is so well stated, because that was something I felt the minute I saw this movie. I was like, he has that same level of just total buy-in that Chris Reeve did. Because that's the thing. I mean, I think Chris Reeve is so good as Superman that you forget that anyone else would look ridiculous in that costume.
Yeah,
but he owns it, and that's what Billy Zane does. He's wearing this purple sock, and you're just like, yeah, well, of course, because that's what the Phantom wears,
right?
And they did Sci-Fi did like a Phantom mini series, maybe about 10 years after this, and I only watched part of it. It was not very good, but you have one scene where you have like the next descendant, whatever, Phantom number 32 or whatever he is, he's introduced to like, this is your legacy, and he's shown the classic Phantom costume, and he's like, well, I'm not wearing that, and right away it's like a balloon, because now you're deflating it for the audience. You know?
Right. Right. It's
the ironic part about that is that the suit they do give him is stupid looking.
Exactly. You should have gone with the sock.
You should have gone with the sock. Yep.
Now, Zaki, as somebody who was already familiar with the Phantom in comics, how did you react to this movie as a fan of the character already, and like how faithful did you feel like it was? How much did it sort of encapsulate the character and sort of the feel of the comic?
So I had recollection of reading the Lee Falk books when I was younger, but at the time this movie came out, I was mainly familiar with the DC Comics series that had come out in like the late 80s, early 90s, with Mark Verheiden. Peter David did it, Mark Verheiden, and that was a little bit darker. So in terms of, and it's set in the present, so the tone was different, because those books, it's about poachers and it's about famine, and it's a great series, by the way. It's highly recommended. It leans much more heavily into sort of the swashbuckling nature of sort of, Lee Falk didn't do that as much. I think this goes a little deeper into sort of the fantasy element, but I think it works. What I do think ultimately it preserves the essence of the character right from the top, which is, for those who came in late, which was like that was part of the comic books for those who came in late, and he dedicated his life to fighting piracy, cruelty and injustice in all their forms. That's the Phantom. That's it. It's not about revenge. It's about, I don't want anyone else to ever go through what I've gone through. So big picture, it hits all the right notes. And I think the fantastical stuff that they add works for this film, right? Because the ring is not mystical in the comics, but I think in this, by making the ring a mystical artifact, it allows for Patrick McGowan to show up as the dad, which is not that's not a thing from the comics, but I like it. I like Patrick McGowan, obviously, and just any chance to see him and Billy Zane play off each other, I'm fine with that.
Yep. Yeah, Patrick McGowan has such a great voice that I'm like, he's one of those like low key narrate my life people.
Right.
Yeah. Although it's funny, when I saw Braveheart, I was like, "Oh, it's the dad from the Phantom."
What an ass!
Yeah. Why is he being so mean?
I'm not gonna lie. That's not. That's kind of what was my reaction. That is my reaction to Billy Zane in a lot of things, because like I'm used to seeing him as a villain.
Oh, sure.
So
yeah.
I actually, he's one of those actors who, because the first few things I ever saw him in, he was a bad guy. When I see him, I'm like, I'm ready to hate this guy already. Like as soon as he comes on screen, like I see his face and I'm like, I don't know, it's just a weird thing that I have. And but he was so sincere and such a like good guy through and through. And Zaki, you're right, he had that Christopher Reeve quality of just like, he is good for goodness sake, and I believe it. And I was coming in prejudiced against him. Prejudiced in such a way of like, you're a bad guy, and I'm used to seeing you as a bad guy, but he turned that around very quickly for me, because he was just so sincere and so earnest in the way that he portrayed this character, and just sort of like I totally bought it.
I have to tip my hat to the stunts in this film. It's been a little while since I'd watched the movie, and I forgot about the plane crash sequence where they jumping on the horse. My wife is a horseback rider, and so I have a much larger appreciation for horse stunts than I used to, because like I've watched her ride and how much work that takes, and her talking about it and all this stuff. And so like I watched Billy Zane, the actor, the Phantom, whatever, like jump off of what is a moving plane onto a running horse, and then also have Christy Swanson like come down into the frame while the horse is like all that stuff. I'm like, that's so hard. Like that's so hard. You can tell it's not green screen, because when there is green screen or blue screen in this movie, it's pretty obvious. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. And so, though I do love that bridge sequence, very Indiana Jones. And so, but I was just floored by what they were doing, and that nobody cared. Nobody cared.
It's a very stunts heavy movie, but less so effects. But the stunts are fantastic.
This movie came out the same weekend as The Rock.
Wow.
In 1996, and it got obliterated. I mean, this is like bug on the windshield because The Rock made all the money that weekend. And they're both great movies. Like I think they're both
very
like it's not even like I mean, like watch them both. It's great.
Wow.
Yeah. What a great double feature.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But what this movie did in terms of costuming, it is one of the more comic accurate costumes ever on screen. Not even just like it's translated for the film, but it's like it's just what he wears, sans like striped, zebra underwear or whatever, which is fine. Not missing.
Yeah. Not missing that. Yeah.
No. That was a mistake many decades ago. But what I like is the patterns on the suit. So it's like, a lot of people give credit to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man for raised webbing, so you can see it better. The texture's better. The Man of Steel Superman suit, the texture's very good. That kind of changed the way that we're looking at superhero costumes then forward, like what's the texture like. But the Phantom was like, it's kind of a precursor to that. It's like, the texture might be there, but there is some element of design work to catch your eye.
Yeah.
And it looks great. He must have been so hot though. I can't get over how hot that must be in the jungle.
Yeah. You can imagine the humidity just making you just a big old water balloon in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Could not have been fun. I did enjoy at the very end though when he takes off the mask. There's like the whole, she's like, take off the mask and I know who you are and all that. And I love it. It's very clear. Like he's clearly like he's got the domino mask and the hood, the cowl, and it's very clear that he's like wearing makeup around his eyes, like black out his eyes. Yeah. But he like puts his head down, takes off the mask, and suddenly there's no more makeup on his eyes.
It's like Batman Returns when Keaton tears off his mask at the end.
Yes,
it's a similar thing. Where you're like, wait a minute.
At least this one, there's no weird shot like in Batman Returns where there's like a 1 second shot of Keaton where he's clearly not wearing eye makeup.
That's right.
Yeah, they covered that well at least.
Yeah, they did. And I give him props for having kind of messy hair even when he does take it out.
Right.
Because Michael Keaton takes off his head and he's like, well, maybe it's the wiry hair. It doesn't really go anywhere.
Right.
But yeah. Yeah, but,
there's so much to love about this movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you had said that Billy Zane's, or we had all said that Billy Zane's Phantom is very much like Chris Reeve's Superman. You said Michael Keaton. So in the same era, Michael Keaton's Batman is very much also Alec Baldwin's Shadow, like the way that they play their alter egos to their characters, all in the same vein. And I just like that we get kind of like these weird natural successors to the very characters that kind of inspired them in the first place. We're kind of watching it in reverse.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Because like this, the Phantom as a character predates Superman by a couple of years in the 30s, but Billy Zane was clearly taking some cues from portrayals of Superman. I would guess Christopher Reeve was a big influence on him. I haven't heard any interviews where he said that, but I would guess that was an influence on him. So it is kind of funny of how like this character comes before Superman, but he is taking cues from a man who played Superman. And yeah, that's interesting about the Phantom. About
the Shadow.
The Shadow as well. I almost said the Strangler because I was just watching The Office and the Scranton Strangler was in my mind. The Shadow. The Shadow knows. The Strangler knows.
Where you live. Be careful. Yeah.
Yikes.
Any final thoughts on any of these things? Zaki, would you like to go first?
Yeah, a couple of things. The one thing I wanted to make sure to mention is David Newman's score, which is amazing,
yes.
And I listen to it all the time. It is beautiful and heroic and swashbuckling in it, and it almost single-handedly elevates the movie by like a letter grade to me. You know, I think you can see the ways the score might have gone in a different ways and really given it the wrong tone. But the Phantom theme is great, and the music when the Phantom is first revealed, and if you listen to the score, you can actually hear Phantom. You can actually hear it on the track, which I think is such a neat little piece of music making that David
That's
Newman
very
did.
cool.
Another thing I wanted to mention is I like the little reunion of Biff Tannen's thugs that we get in the beginning of the movie, because of course Billy Zane is one of Biff's thugs in Back to the Future 1 and 2, and Casey Shimashko, I think is how we say it, who is the guy who he gets taken into the jungle patrol. He's like, there's a guy out there with a wolf. He was also one of Biff's thugs. So I feel like Billy Zane might have called in a favor and gotten his old buddy there just to punch him in the face. So I like that little piece.
I just watched Back to the Future like last week, and I did not notice that at all. And now I'm mad at myself. That's
yeah.
So cool.
Look at the diner scene. You'll see Billy Zane and Casey, both of them there.
That's awesome.
I love that. I freaking love that. Yeah, Back to the Future is one of my favorites. So like that was that was cool. I recognized I mean obviously recognized Billy, like I knew Billy Zane was in it, but I didn't realize that the other guy was also one of Biff's thugs. That's fantastic. I love that. Tim, what are your final thoughts?
I loved this movie when I was a kid. Love it now. It's still super fun. The only part that I really I almost cocked my head at when he goes into the Phantom goes into his treasure vault and he's like, "Oh, black pearls, you won't find these in New York." And I was like, "Won't you?" Like, really? Like if you were like rural Idaho, like sure, maybe, but like
New York,
it's New York.
I mean,
Yeah, they're probably there. It's okay.
There's kind of a whole diamond district. There's kind of a whole area where there's lots of jewelry. So yeah, you'll find some. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That, and I think that Carrie Hiroyuku Tagawa, as the great Kabai sang, should get a shout out because Shang Tsung forever. Like he elevates any bad guy that you give him. He's like Shang Tsung is not Shang Tsung. Kabai Sang is like nobody know, like whatever. He's almost like a throwaway. He could be a throwaway villain, but he exudes coolness.
Yeah.
And I just who doesn't love a good sword fight on a pirate ship? And so I think the movie does a great job at moving through different large set pieces and feeling like it hits all the great pulp class. You get the city pulp, you get the jungle pulp, you get the pirates, you get all the good stuff. The only thing he didn't fight is Nazis, and I feel like that's something we would have seen if we had sequels.
I think Kabai Sang introduces the phrase "feed your pretty pink ass to the sharks." To the lexicon, and we're all richer for having that in our
absolutely.
No way.
Tim, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth because that is what I really enjoyed about this film the most. It had all of those. It had the big set pieces. It had the big swashbuckling adventure. Zaki used that word a lot, and that's absolutely the word that came to mind when I was watching it. Is a swashbuckling adventure. And I keep saying Indiana Jones, but it really brought me to that place, that mindset of an Indiana Jones film or a Jurassic Park film, or they're high adventure, and in such a fun, sincere, endearing way. Every character felt like they were leaping off a comic book page. Every word of dialogue felt kind of silly, but in a good way. It was enjoyable. It was meant to be entertaining and not to be taken overly seriously, just seriously enough, taken to be serious in the sense that everyone was sincere and that the premise was meant to be sincere. But but in a way that like is just it is for fun. It is for fun. It is for entertainment. There's not the need to like, well, let's give everybody a dark and gritty motivation for why they're doing what they're doing because dark and gritty rules the day. Like, no, like there are, it's okay to have people who are good for the sake of being good. And I think that's something we've kind of right now is not in vogue. And I'm really happy to watch a movie that does value that. I thoroughly enjoyed it for all of those reasons. I will say it's probably not a movie that I would have picked out of a lineup. Like if I was just looking at Amazon Prime and that's where I watched it. If I was looking at Amazon Prime and it was like, here's 10 movies we recommend for you right now. Just looking at like the poster and the description, it may not have been a movie I would have chosen based on those things, but based on the recommendation of people whose opinion I respect, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try this. And I am so glad I did. So whether you are an old school fan of this movie like Zaki and Tim, or whether you have never tried it out, but you're sort of, you like some things of this genre, absolutely watch it. Or if you've seen it, rewatch it because it is worth it. It is such a fun time. And I wish more movies like this were being made today.
I have two things that I wanted to say that I forgot about. One, that the Palmer Mansion, the outside of it is the Playboy Mansion's Hugh Hefner's house, which I thought was fun because I looked it up earlier. I was like, wow, that's a nice house. I wonder who lives there. Oh, interesting.
That tracks.
I know of him. Second, we talked so much about that this movie feels like Indiana Jones and blah blah blah, and that's also because it was written by the screenplay is by Jeffrey Boehm, who wrote Last Crusade.
That's right.
And so I think that is you can feel the pulp DNA all working in there. Yeah, so it's good.
And produced by Alan Ladd Jr. Produced by Alan Ladd Jr., who made Star Wars happen. So we have him to thank for this as well. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't help but it was a Paramount. It is a Paramount film, and every time I see those Paramount, the mountains, I think of Indy.
I think of this movie. Is that bad that I think of this one before Indiana Jones?
That's cool. That's really, really cool. Hey, before we sign off, Zaki, where can folks find you on the internet if they'd like to follow you and read your stuff?
Oh, well, as I said up top, you can find me on Twitter at Zaki's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. That's also my website, justada.com. I write regularly for the San Francisco Chronicle. My reviews are also at IGN and various other places. And yeah, generally, if you at me on Twitter, I will respond to you. So I would love to hear from any of y'all listening to this.
Right on. And how about podcasts?
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I co-host the Movie Film Podcast. That's just one word, Movie Film, with my partner Brian Hall, who is a television writer, and we get together every couple of weeks. We talk about the latest releases, news, reviews, etc., and we also do commentary tracks for older films, including coming up next month, one for a little movie called The Phantom from 1996.
Nice.
That was so awesomely timed.
Yes.
Fantastic.
I will vouch for the Movie Film Podcast is fantastic. I've listened to you guys a number of your reviews and always enjoy it. So I will encourage anyone. I'll put a link to everything you just mentioned in the show notes and encourage everyone to check you out everywhere on the internet that you can be found. Because I'm a big fan of your writing and your podcasts. And like I said, we've the three of us have talked to each other on Twitter for a long time, and it was a blast to finally get to talk to you on our show. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for thinking of me. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely.
Our pleasure.
You can find us at beerwithgeeks.com, thoughtbubbleaudio.com that's where our network is. And that's where you can find lots of other shows. If you like movies, you're going to like Tim's podcast, Academy Rewind, where they watch every Best Picture nominated film 1 year at a time. You can find us at Beer with Geeks on Twitter. You can find us anywhere podcasts are found, whether it's Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, whatever. We're everywhere. You'll also be able to email us, beerwithgeeks@gmail.com, and leave us ratings and reviews wherever you find your podcasts. And you can follow me on Twitter at Frank Ramblings. Tim, you're at Timothy PG13. Those those are the best places to find us.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. So until next time, cheers.
Cheers.